Kia ora, good evening. I'm Eric Young. Tonight on Prime News, 2 dead, homes destroyed as a massive earthquake rattles the top of the South Island and the bottom of the North. Utter devastation. Kaikoura is cut off as crucial road and rail links are severed. And outrage as 19 Christchurch residents fleeing to higher ground return to find their homes burgled. Heavy rain across the country's north tomorrow, fine spells down the South Island's east coast, showers in the south.
This is Prime News, first at 5:30.
As aftershocks continue to rattle the middle of the country, the clean-up continues from this morning's 7.5 magnitude earthquake, which struck just after midnight. Its epicentre was inland from Kaikoura, near Culverden in North Canterbury, and it hit just after midnight. A tsunami warning was issued for much of the east coast of New Zealand, and since then there have been several 6 magnitude and a number of 5 magnitude aftershocks in the region. 2 people have died, one in the collapse of the historic Elm Homestead in Kaikoura, the other at Mount Lyford in North Canterbury. There is extensive damage throughout the upper South Island. Slips have closed State Highway 1 in several places on the coast road between Christchurch and Picton. In many places, the quake shook items off shelves. The CCTV vision shows the moment the quake hit Wellington. It was recorded at the Gulf Warehouse in Thorndon. Power was knocked out to some areas immediately after the quake. These pictures posted on Facebook are from Nelson, where swaying power lines arced. The local lines company says 870 homes were at one stage without power. Most have now had it restored. The Clarence River, which had been backed up by a slip, has breached this afternoon, sending a huge wall of water downstream. Residents have been urged to move to higher ground. A local state of emergency has been declared in Kaikoura and Hurunui, which took a major hit from the quake. Prime Minister John Key says military helicopters have been deployed to the worst hit areas. Jacob Brown has this story.
3 minutes past midnight on the South Island's east coast.
It's okay. Shit.
Magnitude 7.5, and the shaking dragged on for well over a minute.
Shit.
It struck the North Canterbury town of Culverden, but was felt right across New Zealand.
What the is going on?
Hundreds of aftershocks have been felt. It even triggered a tsunami warning for the entire east coast. Waves of 2.5 metres were recorded, the highest tsunami wave New Zealand has seen in close to 40 years. As daylight emerged, so too did the extent of the damage. Railroads rerouted, highways smothered by landslides. At the Elms homestead in Kaikoura, 2 people escaped, including a 100-year-old woman, but another man didn't make it.
It's just a bloody shame. That's all brick and mortar, but you don't bring the people back.
The aftershocks have been hard to escape, still rumbling on while our cameras were rolling.
Yeah, they were finished in 1876. There's another one.
How many of those have you felt in the past few hours?
You lost count.
Just be careful, eh?
Down the road at Glenstray Farm, Johnny Trewin now has a massive clean-up on his hands.
Usually you get a bit of a warning, but it just went right into it and windows are going...
Parts of the main railway line between Blenheim and Christchurch have been completely wiped out. It'll take days just to assess the damage and who knows how long to fix it.
At this stage, we're not taking any more freight traffic. We are, as we speak, working with coastal ship operators to see how we can move some of that freight from a coastal perspective.
As the full extent of the damage is being assessed, people are being warned to expect the inevitable, more aftershocks.
In the end, you can always put houses and roads and infrastructure back together again. It's where you've had loss of life or potential injuries to people that obviously your hearts really go out to people.
Jacob Brown, Prime News.
Residents in the area are being advised to stay at home and avoid the coastline. State Highway 1 from Picton to Kaikoura is closed. In North Canterbury, State Highway 7 from Waipara to Springs Junction is also shut, as is State Highway 7A from Hanma Springs to Tekora Range. Bridges across the roading network are being checked for damage. Geotechnical staff and engineers are making their way around those sites to assess them, but some of those bridges will remain closed until further notice. Annabelle Tukia joins us now live from Parnassus. And Annabelle, you left Christchurch at 12:30 this morning. Just how bad is State Highway 1?
Well, Eric, we did, yes, hit the road very early this morning, heading north on State Highway 1, and our first sign of trouble was at Parnassus. We came across a bridge that had subsided on the north side. A car had come through there and basically nosedived into this ditch, flipped on its roof and then skidded along on its roof. Now, the driver was taken to hospital by the time we got there, but this car was just literally sitting in the middle of State Highway 1 on its roof. We then continued further north to the Hunderleys, and that's where we have seen the worst damage today. The road has subsided in places, it's slipped, there's vegetation that's come down and rocks, and then we continued on, and this here and just south of the Kaikoura Coastal Road is where we finally hit the end of the road. This is a railway bridge and it's subsided up to 1 metre on either side, and that is probably going to pose one of the biggest challenges for authorities in coming days. This is such an important network and it's been completely decimated.
Annabelle Tukia, thank you. The Kaikoura quake was bigger and more complex than the 2010 shake, which first devastated Christchurch. And it appears it wasn't one, but two earthquakes occurring at the same time. One was a thrust quake, where one side rises above the other. The other quake was a strike slip, where the fault moves horizontally.
Two different fault mechanisms on two different faults at two different orientations. It all adds to the puzzle we've got to try and unravel over the next few days.
So-called earthquake lights were also seen. That's where the pressure is thought to create an electrical charge in the crust, which emits light into the atmosphere. A Christchurch family evacuated in the middle of the night following the tsunami warning arrived back home to find their house had been ransacked by thieves. Theirs was one of 19 homes burgled in the hours after the quake. Emma Cropper has their story.
Every cupboard, drawer and shelf tossed across the floor, not by the earthquake but by opportunist burglars.
Oh no, they've taken my antique lighter.
As the tsunami sirens screamed out, personal belongings were stolen along with thousands of dollars worth of electronics, even their Mazda truck.
They've just ransacked the house. It's like, it's horrible, it's terrible in there. It's like, ugh.
Even targeting 14-year-old Skylar's room.
It's crazy, it doesn't feel real. It's just, I don't know what to think.
Her 12-year-old sister Alicia has muscular dystrophy. The looters took off with her $5,000 hearing device.
I feel depressed, sad and angry.
The burglars hit the home as the family, along with thousands of others living near the sea, moved to higher ground in the night following the quake, with the Christchurch coastline becoming under threat of a tsunami.
Yeah, we got up and got out of the house. And then we've tried to go back to sleep, but it's basically been shaking ever since.
Jumped in the car and ended up out the back of the airport.
Yeah, it's a different experience. And the earthquakes, yeah, still shake us up. So.
And this time managed to bring out the worst in some people.
And I know those kind of people don't care. They just get it in their heads and probably just go for it.
And adding to the stress of an already eventful morning. Emma Cropper, Prime News.
The damage, though, isn't restricted to the South Island. Wellington also felt the rolling quake, with many buildings suffering extensive damage. Mitch McCann reports.
Residents banding together in Lower Hutt, the midnight jolt forcing families out of their homes, seeking higher ground as the shaking prompted warning of a tsunami.
We decided to fill up our cars with petrol and stuff, with all the equipment documents, and come up to the hillside just to be safe.
In the CBD, many footpaths were covered in shards of glass, the quake blowing out a number of shop windows.
It was really scary, it's just a new experience. I've never experienced this before.
I was safe, we were safe, and the TV has fallen down when we immediately get down under the table.
Residents took to the streets with sleeping bags and blankets, keeping warm as they took refuge. For visitors to the capital, an unwelcome experience of local life.
We were fast asleep and the building just started moving, and I was looking out the window comparing to the building next door, and it was just swapping.
Tourists sitting nervously inside the Novotel building, many never experiencing anything like today's earthquake.
Well, we didn't plan it as being part of our tour, for sure. It's an extra they added for us.
As the sun rose, more damage became apparent. Wellington's Wharf suffering extensive structural damage. The City Council also fast to act, telling locals the CBD was closed for business. All trains, buses and ferries cancelled with no replacements scheduled.
We want to make sure that the CBD's fully safe and operational before we bring people in unnecessarily.
In the harbour, 2 inter-island ferries sit idle next to 2 Bluebridge vessels. Passengers spending the day on the water, unable to dock because of concerns over wharf facilities. And whether schools and businesses will open tomorrow is still unclear, with engineers working through a long list of buildings to inspect. Mitch McCann, Prime News.